Welcome to Spreadsheet Geek. In this video, we're going to create a multi-layer power map using two sets of data. One set of data will be existing sales data. The other set will be potential customers. Although this video uses sales data, you could use any two or more sets of data you're trying to draw a correlation from. First, let's create a simple one-layer map and look at some of the features of Excel Power Maps. This video was made using Microsoft Excel 2019. In this video, I'm going to assume you know how to get your points or your data on the map in the right location. If you don't understand that, please see my other video entitled How to Get Started Using Power Maps. In this worksheet, I've got the world's major populations. Most of the countries of the world are on here. I'm going to go ahead and insert a power map. This is what opens up after a few seconds. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this tour editor over here, which takes up a lot of space on the left side of the screen. And I'm also going to hide my field list. These are the two column headers that I have over here in my data, country and population. It's a pretty simple two-field range. I'm also going to hide that. You can bring that back anytime by hitting this key right here. Let's take a look at some of the basic features of Power Maps. The first thing is this zoom in and zoom out. You can do that. You can rotate the globe. This is kind of a three-dimensional spherical globe. If you want to go to a flat map, you can do that using this option up here. You can add map labels for the countries. And if you zoom in far enough, you can see a lot of the smaller towns and villages and so forth, as well as other features. You can rotate the map here to some degree. You can rotate north away from up as well. Those are the basic viewing options. If you want to insert things on the map, there's a 2D chart and a text box available. And there's some other options up here. There is a refresh data option as well. If you add some new countries and populations to your list, you can go ahead and refresh them into the data model. Up here on the left side of the menu, there's some options to create a video, and under the tour category and the scene category, you could create some very flashy progressions of almost like flying in an airplane over the map and then pausing to look at certain things on the map. I'm not going to talk about these options in this video, but that might be a topic in itself for a future video. So Power Maps works with Bing Maps, both being Microsoft products. And when I selected this data a few minutes ago and inserted a power map, this two-column table of data was fed into the data model, and Power Map, working with Bing Maps, decided whether it could find a location that matched up with either of these items. And of course, for the countries, it did locate a position on the map to put a dot. Bing Maps and Power Maps uses cities, counties, states, provinces, postal codes, and if you have latitudes and longitudes, it will recognize those as locations on the map. So what we got was a little dot in each country. In doing that, Power Maps created a layer and called it Layer 1. I would encourage you to rename these. That way, when you have multiple layers, you can keep them straight. And you can collapse everything up into this one layer. Let's look at some of the options here. Under the data option, you can present your data in different ways. We have the default right now, which is a stacked column. If in our data, for some reason, we had China broken down by province or some other category and it was multiple numbers here, we could stack up those columns. It doesn't really apply to us, and it looks the same as if we go with a clustered column. It's just a point on the map. This is a bubble presentation. It just changes it to round, but you can change the relative size of these, which I'll show you in a minute. There's also heat map, which can show when you have many different points in an area, you can show the concentration better. And you can go by region as well and get a map like that. Let's go back to stacked columns. We already talked about location. This is how you pin down the position of your data point. For height, let's add a field and we'll call that population. And I'm going to zoom in on the map here and rotate it a little bit. And you can start to see, you may have to go to your layer options here and change the height parameter. You can see our little columns growing a little bit. So we have a larger population over here in some of these countries than in others. So you can play around with that. You can also play around with the thickness if you want to show them as more blocky, as well as the opacity where you can kind of make them see-through. And that works kind of nice with the map labels. If you want to read your map labels through your point there, you can make it more opaque or less opaque. While we're on the layer options, I should mention you can change the color of your points as you see fit. You can also customize your data card, which is kind of this little box here that appears when you hover over the point. It'll give you our two parameters there for the country and population. And you can actually add other columns of data that don't appear anywhere else on your map. As long as they're in your original data, you would have to add those to the data model. That's pretty much it for the layer options. There is also a filter option here in the middle. You can add a filter. We can filter by country. For example, if you wanted to take out France, you would have to select all, which is the default, and then uncheck France, and it just kind of disappears. So if you ever had a need to do that, you could do that as well. Let's go ahead and delete that filter. There's one thing I'd like to point out that's not so intuitive. If you go to your data options, this type of chart, the column charts, uses height as a way to differentiate one population from another. But if you look at this word here, it says height. If you switch to the bubble, that switches to size. So this is a presentation of relative population size based on the area on the map that circle covers. And you can, of course, make those relatively larger if you want. And then we already talked about doing this so you can read through them. That's a key distinction that's not so obvious when you first start working with Power Maps. In the remaining few minutes of this video, I'm going to build a two-layer map for analysis of my sales data for marketing purposes. As I said in the beginning, this could be any two sets of data you're looking for a correlation between. My region is Colorado in the United States. It's a rather medium-sized state. I think Power Maps actually works pretty well on the regional level. So this is my sales data. I've got a number of customers here, several hundred transactions of sales. And I would recommend you lay out your data like this. We've got the customer's name. Put in a country for all the points if they're all in one country or different countries. And in this case, our state is Colorado. I'm using the standard two-letter abbreviation for Colorado. we have the cities, and we have postal codes that we shipped our product to. Our product is not really important what it is, but it's a product that is marketed to the general population. So where there's more people, we should have more sales in general. So let's put this data on the map by inserting a 3D map. Okay, after about 10 seconds, this is what opened up. I've got a presentation here with a map. On the left side, I've got my tour pane. We're only going to have one tour that we're working on in this presentation, but if you had more than one, they would be stacked up here and you could jump from one to the other. I'm going to go ahead and take that out of the view pane. You can either hit this X right here, or you can just select that button on the toolbar. The field list has been created and it's showing here. It shows my 6 column headers. Same column headers from my data over here. The only difference is, and I noted this in my other video on Power Maps, they get rearranged into alphabetical order, so please note that. Also note that out of these 6 items, Power Map has chosen 4 of them as actual locations. So it did not choose customer or total revenue, so it looks like it's working pretty well. And always make sure that these are filled in over here on this second column. This is what Bing Maps and Power Map calls it, and this is what we call it. So we called it ship to postal code, they just call it postal code. You have to have something selected over here before you can select this item. So what are we looking at here? Let's temporarily get rid of this. I can see already we've got at least one stray dot outside of Colorado. So look for that. I don't know if we've got any others around the globe. Doesn't look like it. So let's take a look at that. State says Colorado, but the cities, I don't know why that's out there. Let's try, instead of selecting city, we weren't going to select cities anyway. We were going to go down to the lowest level of highest resolution data we have, which would be the postal code. So I'm going to select that and see if we can pull all of those dots into Colorado. And it looks like that's a success. So I've got all my sales points in Colorado. We'll go ahead and zoom in on Colorado a little closer. One of the things I'm going to do right away is shift to the bubble chart. And I don't really particularly like this color, so I'm going to change that. I want a nice yellow or orange. And I'm going to move this opacity over so that I can read the map labels underneath, which I will turn on. And I want these dots, right now each dot is a sale transaction, but I want those dots to reflect the size of those sales transactions. So what I need to do there is add from my field list to this size over here, and I want that to be based on total revenue. So I'm going to drag that over. And this pops up. We're only going to have one of those. So I'm going to hide the field list once again, and I don't know why, but it switched back to that blue. Let's change that. Let's resize it and make it a little bit more opaque. That may be a little too small, so I'm going to make those a little bit bigger. Now what I'd like to do, since I've got my sales on the map, I would like to put another layer on this map that shows some indication of potential sales. Fortunately for my region, that data is available free of charge on the internet. In the United States, there's a Census Bureau like there probably is in most countries, and you can actually go on their website and find city and town population totals by state. So I'm going to go to Colorado's, and when I download this, I'm going to get an Excel sheet showing cities and populations. Now remember, our products have broad appeal to the general population, so if I create a layer showing population in the different areas of Colorado, that should be something that reflects potential sales. I'm going to use only the most recent year, 2019, and I'm going to go ahead and clean up this worksheet a little bit. I moved that worksheet into my workbook with my sales data, and I renamed the tab here, and I cleaned it up quite a bit, but there's still some problems with it. When the Census Bureau put together their sheets, they put comma space Colorado after every one, so I don't particularly want that. I'm going to go through and use find and replace to get rid of all those comma space Colorados and replace them with nothing. Now, that being said, I am going to insert a column with the state and use the standard 2-letter abbreviation. I'm also going to insert a column, and I would encourage you to do this whenever you're using Power Maps. Put a country in there. So that's taken care of. Now, there's one other more subtle problem. Some of these cities, like this one, have city after them. Aspen City. I've never heard of Aspen, Colorado referred to Aspen City, Colorado. Some of them also have town. In fact, they all have, it would seem, either city or town after them. The problem with this is that there may be a city or town that's supposed to have city or town in the name. So this is where you have to kind of sanitize your data. I'm going to go ahead and replace all those towns with nothing. As well as the cities. And at this point, I'm going to go down through these carefully and look to make sure I didn't mess anything up with unintended consequences. Okay, I went through and I checked over my city names very carefully, and I found one that was kind of interesting. This City of Creed. I don't know why the Census Bureau refers to it as that. When I look it up on Google Maps, it's just Creed. In addition to that error, which I just fixed, I found several others like Commerce City, Garden City, Orchard City, and Sugar City that have city in the name, so I restored that. The reason I'm taking so much time to get these as correct as I can is because when Power Map looks at these, it may not recognize the city if it's got the wrong name, and it's very important to sanitize and check the integrity of your data before you try to put it into Power Map. So at this point, I'm ready to go. Let's insert a 3D map, and actually, we're just going to add this data to 3D maps. And this is what it presented me with. I've now got two ranges, range and range 1. I've renamed my second layer as Colorado population. And let's try to format that correctly. But before we do that, let's talk about this location. We don't have much to go by over here. We just have city, country, and state. There is no postal code population in the Census Bureau data. So I want to zoom out for a minute and make sure I don't have any dots outside my state of Colorado. And it looks like it gave it an orange color. I don't see any, so that's good news. We've got all of our population centers on the map. I don't need this anymore. But I do need to make this a bubble chart and add a size. So I'm going to pull in the 2019 population to my size and reformat this layer. Let's get rid of this. Kind of annoying. I'm going to choose a more muted color like this gray for these, maybe a little darker than that, and make it less opaque. I want to point one thing out about the layers. If I had done the population layer first and the sales layer second, my sales would be sitting behind my population like this. So to flip a layer down below the other, you go to that layer and double click on the eyeball symbol, and that'll do that for you. They don't tell you that in other Power Map tutorials, and it's not very intuitive, but that's how you do it. So we've now built a sales map. It looks like we have pretty good coverage in Colorado, especially out in the rural areas and along the major highways. But you can zero in on a particular region of the state, and you may need to adjust these population bubbles a little bit, as well as the other sales bubbles, to get a feel for how your sales are doing in different areas. Now we're doing a good job in Windsor, it looks like, but maybe not so much in Greeley. That concludes this Power Map demo. I hope you've enjoyed the content of this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you find this information useful and informative. I will be releasing one video a week at a minimum for the foreseeable future. Thanks for visiting Spreadsheet Geek.